This video is going to show you solo Grandmaster Nightfall getting platinum rank on the Fallen S.A.B.E.R this week. And this is going to show you an easy strat on an Arc Titan on how to do it. I understand that I've done a lot of Titan runs and pretty much everybody's played Titan this season. Who hasn't? You know, but I understand it's going to start to get a little bit one-dimensional for people. So I'm going to start to play Arc Titan less in the coming weeks. All right, so I understand that. So this will be one of my last Arc Titan GMs, if you will, like one of the last. I'll still do a couple, but yeah, this is going to show you the easy strat for Fallen S.A.B.E.R, mainly to get your triumph. So for solo players who just want to solo it, to get your triumph and to get platinum rank, obviously, and whatever weekly featured weapon it is. I'm not sure because I ran this a day before reset, but the strategy still applies. Just because I'm busy on reset day, but not the day before. So sometimes you'll see me do that. So the loot I get at the end of this might not match up with the week that you're doing it. Just bear that in mind. Plus, Bungie is always changing the weekly featured strike weapon that you can get as well with bugs and stuff. So as you can see with this, as long as you've got the emote, the chair emote, right? This one works. The VOG emote works. The key is to get your head in the wall of this Warsat. The more of your head that's in the Warsat, I know it sounds stupid, but the more of it that is, the less likely the odds are to aggro you and kill you, right? If your head is popping out of the Warsat, the enemies will aggro on you, which is probably because they're linked to your crit spot. For the enemy, enemies have crit spot, you maybe have crit spots. So it's actually based on where your head is, not where your legs and stuff are. So it's very interesting to just make sure that your head's in there. You might take a bit of practice to get the positioning on that emote done, but you may as well use it. It's pretty easy to use. So now we'll just melt the champions. Champions do not despawn, so you will still get platinum rank. As you can see, for weapon loadout, we're using double primary, Grand Overture, the Arc exotic machine gun, which I've used this in a Grandmaster before, but I wanted to do it again because more and more people are starting to catch on that this weapon's actually decent at what it does. We're using overload grenades and overload bow. We're doubled up on overload. Just nice to double up on them because there's that many overloads. We've got barrier aura rifle, which I recommend over scout because barrier scout just isn't hitting the mark lately. I don't know. Something changed 1 or 2 seasons back where barrier scout just wasn't as good as what it used to be. So I think if you're playing close quarters, like in a close quarter strike, aura rifles are better than the scouts, funnily enough. Any auto rifle that you want to use. Any that you're comfortable with using. So this first room, explanation of this. This room can be as hard or as easy as you want it to be, right? So what I do is I fight from this corridor. Now, the chances of you dying are pretty much not that much risky, but I mean, I did get pushed hard there, but it was because of that mine going off, slowed me and stuff. So, but generally it's decent because you can nade all the adds, and this build, we're using obviously a storm grenade build. It's all about your grenade. Now the adds are going to group up to where you want them to when you play here. If you play at the entrance of this room, you're just going to get sniped, nades at the door. You can't work from it, but you need to get to this area as quickly as possible as soon as you come in this room. That is the key. Now, emote this corner to check if the overload is tethered or not. If you haven't cleared out all the enemies, then chances are the overload might not be tethered. That isn't always the case. It depends on how many snipers you've took out initially, which I didn't take out any of them. Because the barrier has a limit of how many enemies they can tether. I think it's 4 or 3. Yeah? So that means it enabled us to clear out one of the champs. Barrier overload. There's 2 ways of going with it. I would suggest try and get the overload if the opportunity is that they're not tethered. If they are tethered, then you want to go to the back of the room where the entrance was. Let the snipers aggro the snipers to you, because the snipers are the problem, right? Because it's arc burn GM, right? They do a lot of damage to you. You can actually aggro them to you away from the champion and then do that. Or use a super, because super damage penetrates the tethers of barriers. So use it, right? Because we're not using our super for much. On a couple of champs, but not too much, right? Super. just know that when you clear out either barrier overload, you get an extra spawn there of enemies. So don't be just starting to try and work out on the second champ until you took out that spawn of enemies. Then when obviously you take out that champion, you're then on the bypass security protocol section where you just cleared out this fuse. Now what I do for this is I use the bow. I think it's 3 or 4 shots. I immediately turn around and spawn kill marauders. So get a grenade there. Then we're going to use the machine gun. The machine gun's really good on exploders because it just one-shots them, whereas the bow doesn't quite. So I can take out all the exploders, plus all the marauders are dying behind me, so you've just multitasked the enemy spawns, and it's not a problem to do that. But you've got to be quick at doing it. If you're not, the exploder shanks, when they get close, they will kill you, so you've got to be careful with it. Right? That's why I've suggested just whipping out the machine gun and melt them. If you're going to go this route, it's decent. Right? I haven't had to work too hard to get this run done with the Grand Overture. So it's maybe not a meta choice. Obviously linears are, right? But that might be a different issue entirely. It might be the fact that linear fusion rifles are now too powerful. I think they are, personally. I remember a time when no one used to use them. Then they got buffed, everyone used them, 2018-ish. Then they were bad, and then all of a sudden they got buffed, and then we've been using them for quite some time. I think they're too strong, you know. But so I think as I say, Grand Overture's got good ammo economy. You can spam it. Obviously, it's full auto. The first initial shot takes the time, but the rate of fire seems to be a little better after you've got your first shot, and you hold your trigger down. Or if you're on PC, hold whatever, bind and down, and it's pretty good. The only problem is that it's a projectile, so it's not going to instantly hit like Xenophage would, but it is an arc version of Xenophage, and it's got the blinding nades, and it's got the missile loaded. For every shot or hit that you use, that you hit on an enemy with this weapon, you get a missile loaded. It caps out at 20. It turns the weapon into a hybrid Warcliffe coil. It is a Warcliffe coil / machine gun. So it's Warcliffe coil and Xenophage in one. That's what this weapon is. Now what I do here, this is the hardest section of the whole thing. I count 7 seconds from the second wave, arc wave, right? Then I pull out the orb, go right side, use a nade in middle, then strafe to left. I would recommend you watch that maybe 2 or 3 times to understand exactly what I've done there. The timing has to be perfect or near there to make that little bit easier, because if you're slow on picking up the orb, and you need to do the slide technique, so you dash slide like that constantly, because you still get a little bit of momentum. You are slowed with these charges, but you'll still get the momentum, you see. So that's what I suggest that you do on the Titan, is just slide. There are other ways of getting being faster with the orb, but that's what I suggest you do. You can do the thing where you skate and you sort of hit your head on the ceiling and then go faster. I used to do that, but I just do the slide technique now. I feel as though I don't go overly fast to the point where I'm going to bump into an exploder shank, because it's a death at that point. So you need to be right on the ball with that. So with this room here, it can be quite awkward for people because it's a death trap. That's where the Titan comes in with the nades and the bow, because the bow you can strafe shoot in and out, do damage, then strafe in cover, do damage. That's why bows are so good, right? Whereas auto rifle, you see, I don't use that. I'm only using it as a barrier weapon, although it is a really good weapon that I've got. Vorpal, Braytech, so much range on this auto rifle. A lot of people are using the duty bound, but I've used it. I don't think it's nowhere near as good as the Braytech, because I just think it suits me. The recoil pattern of Braytech is just so good for me on console. I feel as though duty bound's alright, but its recoil pattern I'm not a fan on. So that's a preference thing, but duty bound is a good weapon. It's got some good perks on it and stuff. So just use whichever auto rifle that you like using, right? But try and get a damage perk on it, like Vorpal weapon and stuff like that. Because Vorpal, don't forget, people think Vorpal just got nerfed across the board. It didn't. It got nerfed on heavy weapons and special weapons, right? It's still very good on primaries. It actually got buffed on primaries. So the goal here is to take out all the ads surrounding the enemies, aggro them, let the enemies aggro you. right? Like the Marauders, the orange bar Marauders, they need to go down because you need to isolate the champions away from each other and the enemies. And the key is getting the barrier down, not the overload. People are going to make a mistake at maybe trying to take out the overload. You don't. Leave the overload up, because if you do kill the overload as opposed to the barrier, 2 more overloads will spawn whilst the barrier is alive, and the barrier is going to tether those overloads. It's a nightmare. So the order in which you kill champions in this room matters. So make sure that you do that and you're aware of the enemy spawns. Once you know that, you're good to go. Right? Now I'm just trying to really use the machine gun as much as I sort of can, just to sort of show off the ammo economy on it. Bear in mind, on this run, I forgot to put on machine gun scav. I mean, lately I'm terrible with mods. I don't know what it is. I'm really out of the swing with Destiny as well at the minute. Just, as I said, not too fussed about anything about it. But the thing is, when players suggest things, they go on for years and Bungie don't really do anything. But this is why people suggest things ultimately, because they don't want to get bored of the game or fed up or I can't be bothered playing this week because of all these glaring issues in the game. So there's people that complain, but rightly so. You're a consumer. This is a product. I know there's people who are ultimate fanboys on the game. I am, but to a degree. I'm not like an ultimate fanboy where I start defending Bungie when they're making wrong decisions. When they're making wrong decisions, you just say they're making wrong decisions, right? So this is why people suggest stuff, and they have for years. And there's a lot of issues in the game at the minute. We've got 3.0. Subclasses are amazing. Everything's in. There's some things that need buffed and nerfed, but I want to see a 3.0 on playlist activities, core activities that you're doing generally. Revitalize the Nightfalls. Revitalize champions, because champions are a mechanic that aren't going away, because they've updated a lot of exotics with champion mechanics. They need to update the way champions are. Add some more champions. The one from Scourge of the Past, that wasn't a champion, but it was a unique enemy type. Involve that as an extra Berserker style champion or something, right? Add more variations of the champions, update their AII. We want a 3.0 champions, or 2.0 champions technically. That's what we want next, and stuff like that. Because the game is, as I said, we're playing an old version of D2 with 3.0 subclasses. And that's the downside of using D2 as a base of foundation for like the 2.5. This is the drawbacks. People didn't want D3. Oh, I have to start again. I have to start again with my loot. So what? You have to start again. We started again in D2. I like D2 launch. Say what you want. I know there was glaring issues, but I loved it. I just played non-stop. The double primary is what killed it. But the content didn't. The content, the Red War campaign was good. Leviathan Raid was good. Whisper of the Worm mission, 0 hour, all that time was good. We were getting secret missions, we were getting all that stuff. The game felt fresh, at the very least. But we knew that there was things coming. Now, we're in this stage where we're just going to be still playing this game where we're grinding constantly. Pinnacle grind, XP grind, XP grind. And it's like, well, I'm starting to get fed up of it, man. How long are we going with this? And this is why people get fed up, even the best of us. So I'm just explaining to you why there's people, as I say, fed up. And there's new games coming out, so they need to get their act together, because people are going to just start playing other games if they don't do that. So the boss fight itself, right? There's some void shields here, but you can see the storm grenade will just over penetrate the void shield anyways, right? So I'm going to try to keep charge of light, which I've got stacked to. So if I do kill this servitor with my weapon, I would lose 1 stack, but at least keep a stack, because I've got high energy fire on, of course. So I'm going to try to use it when I can, but I don't end up using it as much as I wanted to, but that just goes to show for the weapon. So when the boss spawns in, if you are going to use T-Crash, you need to get your act together and do it right off the bat. Right? Grenade first, then super, and then get out of there, because it is a bit risky. If you wanted to, and I wouldn't argue with you, go Feast of Havoc. It would be actually decent on the boss. And you would get the damage distance, do your damage. It would be more than what T-Crash would be with Heart of Inmost Light. you would get more damage, but Fist of Havoc would take longer to get out, but you're solo, so you get the damage resistance. So I was actually really heavily considering using Fist of Havoc because of its other capabilities it has on clearing out enemies and stuff like this against tethered enemies. But it worked out well, right, as well with the T-Crash. So phase 1 and 2, you can see the boss's HP bar is split up into 4 bars, right? So that was phase 1. Phase 1 and 2, the boss is a sniper, solo sniper, and can melt. This is where you fight from. You don't fight from anywhere else on phase 1 and 2, only here. It is key that you know that if you start fighting anywhere else you're doing it wrong, the boss will snipe you and you could die. The boss will do huge damage to you. Boss is the most threatening thing. Phase 1 and 2, hardest section of the fight, I think. Well, can be if you're not standing right. Like, I'm standing exactly where you should be. The boss ain't going to touch me. What I'm going to do, though, is abuse the super mechanic in the game, which obviously changed 6-7 months ago, whenever it changed, where you get super from your bullets from hitting tanky enemies, orange bars, yellow bars, champs, bosses. So I'm going to continually stun this champ. I'm going to play really slow on purpose to get a super for phase 2. Now, things like this I don't consider like exploit or cheese or anything. This is just smart play. It's like, I'm going to get, like, whatever class you play, and say you're on Tether Hunter, be super handy because you could tether again on phase 2. So knowing things like this, rather than rushing the champ, don't. Just take your time, get your super energy, and I can T-Crash again. It saves on heavy. Not that I needed it to save on heavy, but if I did, it's there because my super's going to do the damage. So we do the grenade, T-Crash, missed, wonderful. So I've just done everything I've just said there for the last 2 minutes is a waste of time because I missed my T-Crash. Oh well, we live again. And we're just going to use a bit of the Grand Overture. We're going to make sure we get 20 missiles at the least. Because don't burn that now. That's the key thing. Don't burn your missiles yet. Because you want them for phase 3 and 4. Yeah? That's when you do want it. Because we've got double primary. So that is where our damage is going to come from. That, the nade and the super. Right, so notice the boss there. Did you see what happened to the boss? The boss actually went from solar to void. Now, this is phase 3. Now, this is a bit of a critical phase, and I actually really screwed it up. I made a bad job of it, because I was missing my bow shots. You've got to take out the 2 exploder shanks, and then the 2 tracers. So, my time was completely off. That's fine. When things go bad, you come back to your zone. But your exploder shanks are your next thing if you haven't took them out, because they're going to push you. The rest of the shanks are not. They will hover, and they will stay next to the barrier. So there's a lot of shanks up, so this is quite dangerous. So we're going to get the stun on the shield, because when you stun a barrier, that tether goes away. It means it gives you time to take out all the shanks. Now we're going to farm a little bit of super, but it's not that important. The thing about this is, though, the boss is immune at the minute, right? Which means we can roam the map for ammo and everything. Say you had less ammo than me and you need more ammo. Well, here you go. Right? Now, I'm going to actually kill the barrier from back here. The reason for that is that there's no time wasted for DPS on phase 3. It means I can get a bit of damage in before Explorer Shanks come out, because there's going to be a couple of amount of waves of that happening. So, like I say, I'm going to take advantage of being in the right position at the right time, rather than killing the barrier from the other side and having to run all the way over here, because this is your next position for damage for phase 3 and 4. You must stand here for damage. Now, the boss fight's not initiating. Why? Because there's one shank up somewhere. Sometimes that happens. That's okay. We can pick up some ammo if we need it. We don't need 50 shots. We're definitely not going to be spamming 50 shots on that phase. The shanks took out. Now the boss is aggroed. We'll get a grenade in, and then we spam Grand Overture. It's important, again, do not use your missiles. If you're going to use Grand Overture on this run, don't use your missiles yet. You're going to spend them when it counts, when the boss is on phase 4, where the boss's head comes off, and the boss will continually enrage on you. Your next goal now is not to do too much damage to the boss. Leave yourself a buffer. What I mean by that is look at the bar between phase 4 and 3. You want a bit of HP above that, just in case, because the exploder shanks will deal damage to the boss if you shoot the shank near the boss, right? And it does a good chunk as well, so leave the boss a little bit 10% above phase 4. That's what I recommend. Don't start phase 4 yet, because it was going to be too risky for you, just in case you do enrage the boss, because you're going to have exploded shanks chasing you whilst the boss is enraged, and it can be quite risky. Sometimes you can get away with it and just kill the boss, it's fine. Sometimes you can't, because on phase 4 there will be snipers that spawn, and your goal is to melt that boss down before the snipers get to you, which you've got actually quite a comfortable amount of time to take this boss out before those shanks come in. There's actually an exploit if you were uncomfortable. It's on the left hand side. It's on left hand side of where I'm standing now. You can stand in this like little hole area sort of thing, and the boss won't know what to do, but the snipers will. So you would have to kill the snipers, then do damage, boss damage, then kill snipers, and you rinse and repeat if you don't know what that is. But this strat is based on that you wouldn't even need to do that, because you have all the damage in the world to kill this boss before then anyways, because we're taking advantage of Arc Acute Burn and all sorts. So what we're doing now is we're just clearing out all the waves of the exploded shanks, because eventually they stop. They are not infinite. This is why as well they give you 0 points. It's not a bug, they've always give you 0 points. What it probably was is it's an oversight. They probably were infinite waves, and somebody changed something at the last minute and said, oh, we don't want infinite waves here, let's stop that. But they forgot to change the score multiplier for exploded shanks. That's why it's 0. That's my best guess anyways, because they've done that for 1 and nothing, with there being infinite waves there. So we're just waiting to see, because you'll still get the text saying infinite waves summon more enemies, but they don't spawn. So I know that the enemies have stopped. So I use a storm grenade, spam Grand Overture, then swap. The missiles are absolutely melting, then do a bit more damage. Look at the damage we're doing with this. And then we'll finish off with super. Boss is just about dead. But that was a solo for this. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.